all you could ask or think, according to the power that worketh in you. You, God, just what he said he would do, he's gonna fulfill every promise. Don't give up on God, 'cause he won't give up on you. He's able. Yeah, yeah. Just what he said, he's gonna fulfill every promise. Don't give up on God, 'cause he won't give up on you. He's able. Hallelujah. Oh, I need y'all help right here. I'm going to say it and y'all repeat it. Oh, he's able. Hallelujah. He's able. Oh, he's able. Help me say it now. He's able. I tried it. Anybody tried it? He's able. Yes, he is. Keep on. Walk upright. Lift your head. He'll dry your eyes. 'Cause he's able. He's able. He's able. He's able. I tried it. Anybody tried it? He's able. I know it gets hard. I know it gets rough. I know you cry sometimes. I know it gets tough. But keep on. 'Cause he won't give up on you. Don't give up on God, 'cause he won't give up on you. Hold your head up, dry your eyes, read your word, you might get a surprise. He's able, yes he is. Don't give up on God. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up on God. Lord, 'cause he's able.
Hallelujah. Glory. Don't give up on God, 'cause he's able. You know, as she was singing, I was thinking of this thing. I used to hear people say when I was younger that you will eat yourself into an early grave. Tonight, Dr. Rick Royston is going to talk about not eating yourself into an early grave. We have something special tonight. Dr. Rick Royston, he's a chiropractor, but he's also, no, I'll just stop. I'm going to let him introduce himself. I'll mess it up. But you need to text somebody, call, share, let people know that Dr. Rick Royston is here, and he's going to help them live an extra 10 years longer if they will just listen to him. So now I present Dr. Rick Royston. Come.
All right, all right. So, like Pastor Sam said, I'm Dr. Rick Royston. I'm from Chase Oaks Chiropractic. I am a chiropractor, and that is really what we focus on and specialize in. But I am also certified in nutrition. I got my background in exercise physiology, and I was an athletic trainer, sports medicine degree. And so, you know, what I realized early on was there was a lot more to health than just one avenue. And that's really why I love partnering with Pastor Sam. And you know, I was telling Shayna today just how much I appreciate you and Miss Gloria, and just we've been open 15 years now. In 2 weeks it'll be 15 years, and we've been partnering with Pastor Sam almost 12 years. And I remember the first time we met, it was such a God encounter, because he was open to the understanding that people were sick, suffering, and hurting inside the church just as much as they were outside the church. And, you know, I just want to honor Pastor Sam. You know, even I heard a conversation a little bit that he was having the other day. And not saying that you're old, but I will say a lot of people that have reached the milestones that you have, being in ministry for so long and all that you've done, they tend to sit back and they just kind of like, you know what, I can relax now. And I heard him talking about being available to help somebody and going above and beyond. And I've seen Pastor Sam do that for the past 12 years. And it's, you know, you've been vital in my life and been, you know, a source of godly wisdom. And I really appreciate that. And so honor you. But I'm excited to be here because we haven't done this in a long time. The C word kind of put the stop on that. And so it's nice to be back in person and actually doing some workshops. You know, we started doing these things a long time ago because we wanted to teach people about health, how to get healthy, how to be well. And like I said a few minutes ago, we realized that there was a lot missing, and especially inside the church. And when people are on the outside looking in and going, well, what's different about the people of God? Well, if we have the same things going on, people are going to go, well, why do I want that? And so we're going to walk through some different things tonight. But it's like in Luke when Jesus was talking about, you know, giving a person a fish versus teaching them how to fish. And teaching them something, how to take care of themselves, how to take action for themselves, we know can change their life. So tonight, you know, somebody was just sharing with me that she had heard me speak in the church about 6 years ago. And she's like, wow, that stuff that you talked about was actually true. And so she had went back and looked through her notes and realized she had made all these changes, and it really had impacted her family's life. And so you may be sitting here tonight and hear some things that you haven't heard before. It may even be contradictory to what you have heard before, but that doesn't mean that it's not correct. And I said it's not about being right, but it is nice when somebody comes back and tells you that you are right. But, you know, some of the things that you're going to learn tonight can help you take full advantage of how God created our bodies to work, but also take control of your health and realize that God created us with a doctor inside of us, right? And we need to learn to put our faith and trust in what He has created and not what man has created. And so some of the things you're going to learn tonight can radically change your health, your family's health, and even going forward, looking down the road, and you know, hopefully we can guarantee that 10 extra years. And not just extra years, but quality, living health and life to the fullest. And so tonight, I would like to, multiple starts here, but I want to share a story. And there was a lady, Nancy, and Nancy was about 35 years old, going down the road. Somebody rear ends her. So when you get rear-ended, you start to have pain, and you feel it for a few days, but then it starts to go away. And Nancy felt better for a few days, and a few weeks went on, and a few months, and she would notice she had some neck pain here or there. So when people typically hurt, where do they go? The doctor, exactly. And what do they get? They get medicine. And so they gave her some pain medicine. They gave her muscle relaxers. And in the beginning, that actually worked. She could notice that she felt a little better. But then over time, those medications wore off. The cause was still there. The pain was still there. The reason she was hurting was still there. And so she continued on. And then it got worse. And it got worse. And when it gets worse, what do? You go back to the doctor, right? And they do some tests. And then they give you more medication. And then that wears off. And then you go back to the doctor and they do more tests. And then they give you more medication. And then now you've got a major problem. So this isn't, the typical route isn't working. So then they send you to a specialist, right? And they do special tests. And then you get special medications, right? And unfortunately for her, that was never the root cause of her issues. And so she continued to get worse over time, got to the point where picking up things was being affected. She started having this numbness and tingling down her arms, had trouble driving and turning. And I know a lot of people listen to that and, online sitting here and you go, well, that's me. I've got some of those things too. It's really interesting the number of people that actually suffer with those things, and we learn to accept it as common and normal. There is nothing normal about that. It may be common, but it's not normal. And so finally what they did, Nancy went in and they said, the only thing that we have left is surgery. So she had tried injections, all these different things. So they go in and they cut her in the front, split her neck open, and they fuse her spine together. Well, that really was a temporary fix. A few months later, she has worse pain that she had had before. So now, guess what they tell her? You got to live with it. Like, there's nothing else we can do. We've given you all the medications. We've tried all the surgeries. We've fused your spine together. You've got injections. We've gone down the path. You just need to learn to live with this. This is going to be your life for the rest of your life. And we'll try to numb it as much as we can with the medication, but make sure you never, ever let a chiropractor touch you. You need to minimize your exercise, and most likely you're not ever going to be able to work again. And you imagine, that's young being in that position. And so what happened with these medications, she took one, and the pain medication started to affect her liver, and it caused cholesterol to go up. So they give her cholesterol medication, which caused her kidneys to shut down and started eating away at the muscles. And then that puts her on more medication, and she starts to lose hope, right? Now she's thinking, I'm never going to get well, and lost hope. And when that happens, when you can't see light at the end of the tunnel, there's no point to live, right? So they put her on antidepressants, which starts to affect her gut and destroys all of her gut bacteria. And then she's got digestive issues, and then thyroid problems, and it goes on and on and on. And how many of you guys know that there is a time and place for medications? It may save your life, but we were never intended to take these things forever. How many of you guys have actually ever read or watched the commercial when you talk about the medication and the list? Like at the end of it, like you hear that and you go, who in the world would actually take those things? But then when you're in a crisis, you're like, well, I hope that doesn't happen to me, right? And you end up taking that. But that list of medications, the side effects is outrageous. The problem is we never think that's going to be us. But then when it is, then we end up getting put on another one and another one. And here's the crazy thing. Right now in the United States, 70% of Americans take a prescription drug every single day. 51% of Americans take 2 every day. The average American is on 4 medications. And I look at that and I go, to me, that's unacceptable. And I won't share my whole story, but I grew up very sick, taking lots of medications. And in 1999, I was 23 years old. I decided, you know what, this isn't working anymore. And that was the last time that I put a prescription or an over-the-counter drug into my body. Now, if there was a crisis and it's going to save my life, I'm first one in line, okay? But I have learned what is a crisis and what my body can handle, and that's really kind of the point that we want to get to. And what's interesting about this, when you look at our system, is guess who takes more medications than any other country in the entire world? Yeah, we do. And guess who has more surgeries? Guess who has more doctor's visits? Right? So if drugs and surgery and doctor's visits actually made us healthy, where should we be ranked in health? Right? It makes sense that we would be number 1. Does anybody know where we are ranked in health? So I think there's like 191 countries somewhere around in there. We are 68th. So there are third world countries that actually have better health than we do. And, I'm not a geography person, but I can't name 67 other countries. So I look at that and I'm like, wow, there is a problem here. There is a massive disconnect. And a lot of times people think, well, that they look around and they see more people that are sick and hurting and suffering, and it's real. Do you know right now they actually say that 1 out of every 2 people will develop cancer in the United States over their lifetime? 2 out of 3 people will have heart disease. And when you look at heart disease, does anybody know what 50% of the time what the number 1 symptom is? Death from a heart attack. They die. And so you look, and that, you look around and you think, wow, that's pretty dire. That doesn't look very good for us. This is the first time in any kind of recent history where our life expectancy is actually declining. We have 1 in 10 people that are diabetic. We have the numbers are now more staggering, but 1 out of every 5 children actually have some kind of neurodevelopmental disorder on a spectrum somewhere. I mean, the number of people that are taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, like it's going out the roof. And I'm not here to condemn that. I'm just here to say we have to do something different, right? And it was interesting because they started looking at like, well, what's really causing the problem? And so they went to Harvard and they talked to a bunch of different people and they asked them, what do you think it is? And they said, well, it has to be the broken healthcare system. And I agree that to an extent that is it. But if it was just the broken healthcare system, then our healthcare system should be ranked kind of similar to our health, right? If we're 68th, then our healthcare system should probably be 68th. Well, we're actually 37th in the world in our healthcare system, which it actually gets an F every year. So that's not a good sign. But what that tells me is that there is a disconnect somewhere. Not just in a broken healthcare system, but how we live out our daily lives. And what's interesting is we spend more in the United States than 10 wealthiest countries behind us combined on our healthcare every year. The average person last year spent $12,550 on their health. A lot of people sit there and they hear that number and they go, well, that wasn't me, I didn't spend that much. But the reality is, you do at some point. It's one of those you pay now or you pay later. It's actually interesting. I was looking up some diabetes because that just seems so prevalent now. I mean, everybody coming in, just their diabetes and their blood sugars going up. It's actually interesting. So if $12,500 is the normal amount that people pay, it actually goes up to over $18,000 a year that people pay when you're diagnosed with diabetes. That's above and beyond what insurance and those kind of things will cover. And what's interesting about that aspect of it, do you guys know what the number one cause of bankruptcy is every single year in the United States? Medical bills, right? Harvard did a study, JAMA put this out, it said that actually over 77% of people who file for bankruptcy because of medical bills actually had what they considered to be good insurance. So we're looking to another broken system thinking that it's going to save us in the long run. And the truth is, we have to save ourselves. Like, we have to take care of ourselves and move past this. And what it boils down to is, what do we believe about what God says about us? Do we believe that we were created broken? Do we believe that we were created without the capacity to heal? Do we believe that that God's not the God of impossible? And we look at that, and what I tell patients is we have to combat that mindset because this problem has become so common with what God says, right? And God says that you are loved. He said that you are fully equipped. He said that you are complete and that you are whole, that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. It says that we are created in His image and that He will provide for every single need. So if that's God's word, which does not lie, right? It never returns void. Then why are we putting more hope and faith into a broken system that doesn't tell the truth, doesn't give you everything that you need, lies to you, instead of staying on God's word? Now, I will say, we live in a fallen world. There is sickness, there is disease, and you can bet we're all going to die. But what is it like before we get there? And we can minimize risks, and that's what we want to get into, is minimizing these risks. And to do that, though, we're going to talk about the 5 essentials that we deem the 5 essentials of health. But first, you have to understand what health is and what it is not. If I go up to 100 people and I ask them, what do you think health is? How do you determine if you're healthy? What do you think most people would say? Yeah, how do you feel? But the reality is, if I ask those same 100 people, how do you feel? Most of them say, not that good. So then what you're telling me is, based on how you feel, you're not really that good. But if you ask people, they'll say they're healthy. It is really crazy how we think. But the truth is, health is not based on how we feel. I mean, we've all known people who felt great and the next day they had a heart attack. Or they were living their life, doing normal things, even active, looked healthy, looked fit, and then they start feeling bad. 2 months later, they're dead from cancer. How in the world did that happen? The truth is, it takes about 10 to 15 years for disease to develop in your body before you ever have a symptom. That doesn't mean people just caught cancer or just caught a heart attack, like we think of catching a cold. Those things develop for years, and that's why it's so important that the earlier we start, the better chance we have of actually minimizing those risks. And so they went and they asked these top doctors all over the world, what is the definition of health? And they said it is a complete well-being they didn't say spiritual, and that's why I keep wanting to say, but of physical, mental, and social well-being. And what's interesting is every one of them left out the spiritual well-being. Well, we know you can't disconnect that, right? You cannot separate those, and that's part of the biggest problem with our current system is we try to take God out of the equation and the principles that he has for how we were created to live. So know that health is not based on how you feel. It's not an absence of symptoms. It's how your body is functioning and healing. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So we're going to go through 5 different things. The first one, though, that we always start with is mindset. And this is where we have to start changing how we think and, understanding how health works, but also that we have to do things differently. And I say that a lot, but, I think it was Albert Einstein, you say if you find yourself going in the same direction as everybody else, you need to stand up and go the opposite direction. So you think about this. If you want to be wealthy, you don't go talk to people that are living paycheck to paycheck or can't pay their bills or they've filed bankruptcy 5 times. You go talk to people that have amounted a certain amount of wealth that you go, oh, yeah, that looks pretty good. And you talk to those people and you learn what they do. If you want to have a good relationship, go talk to people that have been divorced 5 times that have a toxic relationship. You find somebody who has built a strong relationship, a marriage, and what have they done? And you mimic that, right? Well, same thing with health. I mean, if you look around and you've got people that are telling you what to do that aren't healthy, that don't have what you want, it's okay to go, you know what? I don't buy that. I'm going to do something different. It's okay, right? But then we also have to understand that we are victorious. And when I say mindset, we have to put that scripture into play that God created us as more than conquerors. He created us as victorious, and that he has equipped us to be successful at this. And that's so contrary to how we think as Americans and just as a society in general. People live beaten down constantly. And when you get beat down enough, you start to believe in that. And so we have to change how we think about who we are and that we can accomplish this and be victorious at it. And then, what are you willing to do? And what do you want to do to get there? This is such a powerful aspect. Every person I talk to, I don't care if they are looking at what they want their family to look like, their health to look like, their relationship with God. Every person has to have a picture of what that is. So even if you want to be a certain weight or get off of certain medication, you have to have the vision for that. But then you have to decide, what are you willing to do to get that? And unfortunately, I had a mentor that used to say, everybody wants to drive a Mercedes, but nobody's willing to do the work. And a lot of times that's true. We're not willing to put in the effort to get that goal, but you have to decide, what is it worth? Is it worth spending time with my family and growing old together? Is it worth not being sick and suffering? And when you finally decide what it is you want and what you're willing to do, then you set that into action. And those are goals. And you can't downplay that. It's become one of those things that everybody's got their list, this list of goals, and you come around on New Year's Eve and everybody's got their New Year's resolutions. We start talking about those things. But the truth is, you got to have goals. And they have to be attainable. They have to be specific. And they have to be measurable. But that's part of a mindset that has a growth mindset and not failure and wanting to change going forward. Now, 2 other things I want to talk about from a mindset. We all have these people in our lives that they kind of take more from us than put into us, right? We call those vampires, right? They suck the life out of you. Now, sometimes those people might need to be cut off. There are times where they drag you so far down, you're not raising them up at all, and they have to be cut off. But a lot of times those people are family, and so they're not being cut off, right? We have to learn how to continue to love them. We have to learn how to live with them, but it doesn't mean we can't set boundaries. And that is so powerful, of learning how to set boundaries so that you can continue to pour into them and not have them just suck the life out of you. You know, the old T-Mobile thing was your fave five. You are the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And, sometimes, I've got a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 12-year-old. If I spend most of my time with them, I can see how I start to change versus if I'm around people who are successful adults and I can have real conversations with. So we have to make sure that we are getting poured into, and understanding, in Corinthians it talks about our bodies being a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I use that scripture a lot from a nutrition standpoint of what we put in, but also it's what you're putting into our bodies, because I know that Netflix and Hulu and Paramount Plus, whatever that, people go home and they stream these things for hours a night. And you're watching stuff that isn't filling you up. It's mindless. You want to disconnect. You've been going all day and you're tired and you don't want to have to really give any more effort. But the truth is, we put out what we put in. And understanding that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and we need to honor that and get fed. And what I love now is, things like this. It was really hard 10, 15 years ago. You record something, you put it on a tape, and then a CD. Maybe you in the back don't know what a tape is, or maybe even a CD. But now everything you can stream. You record it. You can turn on YouTube or Blinkist or Audible, and you can find all of this material to get fed with. And so spend time. Don't go home in the last few minutes and turn on a TV and just watch nothing. Read something, listen to something. Talk to somebody who pours into you. Make sure that you have things around you that are helping build you up and not just tearing you down. And so that's mindset. I know there's a lot of aspects to that. But as we keep going tonight, what I want you to do, and this is almost every talk that I go through, I always ask people to take one thing and apply that. And this isn't trying to figure it all out and make sure you got this set up right and this is all laid out in the plan, all that. You're going to take one thing tonight and apply it. The moment you walk out the door. That's the goal. And by doing that, we call that getting 1% better. So it may be in the mindset, it may be toxins, it may be nutrition, exercise, the chiropractic portion, but just one thing that you're going to apply and do differently so that you get the results that you want. Now, moving out of the mindset, we're going to move into toxins. And what's interesting about this too is that most people think that it's the environment outside of you that's really toxic. Well, they've actually found, the EPA said that inside your house is about 100 times more toxic than outside. Does anybody know why? Does anybody know what the number one way that we get toxins into our body is? Medication. Right? That's number one. But some of the other major ones are water source. Don't drink tap water, okay? One of the things is you can get a reverse osmosis and put into your house now. It doesn't have to be a whole house filtration system. We have a Berkey that does that's a filtration system. If you just start somewhere with some kind of filtration system, but trying to drink water versus Coke. And Pastor Sam had said initially, we're going to talk about how bad Coke is. And there's research. You can find research to prove anything. But I will tell you, coffee and Coke or sodas does not count as your water intake, okay? That is not your water intake for the day. Now, I will say there's some benefits to coffee and caffeine, so I'm not throwing that out completely. But I will say, all these things that you've heard, these rumors about pouring a Coke on a battery and eating away at it because it's so acidic, it actually does that. Yeah. You can pour it in the toilet and it'll clean your toilet. You drink a can of Coke and it takes about 8 glasses of water to balance out the pH in your system. It is toxic, and we'll get into more of this when we get into the nutrition. Somebody hiding their drink over there? I'm just teasing. Oh, looking at you, okay. But some of the other things, too, are personal care products. All the shampoo, the lotions, the deodorants, the toothpaste. The problem is that we don't just use one of those. We have about 10 to 15 of those that we use every day. And one of the things that I have found that has really helped our household, it's called Think Dirty. And it's actually an app that you can pull up and scan actual products in the store. So we call these lateral moves. It's like if you go to the store and you want toothpaste, and you have one that has fluoride and one that doesn't have fluoride. Well, the one that doesn't have fluoride, that's a better choice. That's a lateral choice. And this helps you be able to identify products that cause cancer or that disrupt your endocrine system, your hormones, the chemicals in your body. So it actually rates them. So that Think Dirty app can help you make sure you're using better shampoos, better lotions, better soap, all of those things, any kind of personal care products that you use. And then the other one that we typically talk about too is cookware. And we always recommend, and I'm going through these pretty quick because most people have questions about nutrition and we'll spend the most time on that. But the cookware, we use cast iron or stainless steel. Those really are the two best options. Now they have, Teflon has been out for a long time, and then the non-stick. But now they're coming out with all these that say no PFEs and these different things, but they're still non-stick. Most of those still have a toxic coating on them that comes off when you cook them. So using cast iron, using stainless steel really is the best option. And so again, think of your body like a bucket that when we're putting stuff in, bad stuff, it fills up. And eventually it gets to the point where symptoms overflow. Well, if we can minimize the load in the bucket, it's going to help our bodies. So every small thing that you choose to do, if you choose to use coconut oil instead of a toxic lotion, or you change your toothpaste and don't use fluoride, all of those things add up over time. And that's the big thing to remember. We get so overwhelmed and inundated with information, and there's so many changes that we need to make and so much we need to do. People get paralyzed by that, and they don't take action. Start with one thing, and then just keep going forward. It becomes a habit, and then it's easier to continue to work on changing those things. All right. Now we get into the good stuff. And this is always where people get the most mad, because you're stepping on people's toes, telling them what they can't eat, what they shouldn't eat, what's better for you. I am just the messenger. You can do what you want to. And the truth is, I always tell people to go research for yourself. Like, don't just trust what I'm saying. Go read. And to be honest, every single time when people go research, they come back and they go, there's something to what you're saying. And really what happens is the Holy Spirit will start to guide you and direct you in the right decisions to make for your health. The worst thing that we can do is make a decision based out of fear. Going back to Nancy, that's what she did. She thought there was no other hope. They were telling her there was nothing else to do. She was scared it was going to keep getting worse, ended up having the surgery. That is the worst decision that we can make, is when we're basing our health decisions out of fear and not the truth. So now let's get into some nutrition. And we're going to hit these pretty quick, but there's some things, Coke, stay away from. Any kind of sodas, those things are given. I usually talk about pork products and shellfish in there too. Those are always the biggest ones. People love bacon. People love their lobster. I'm not saying you can't ever have those things, but you do want to minimize them. And the reason is, if you've ever looked at research into pork, pigs don't do a very good job of getting out the parasites and toxins in their system, and so it stays in there. And so you basically get what you eat, right? And you get what they eat, and they eat trash. And shellfish, guess what they're called? Guess what they eat? They're bottom feeders. They eat other fish's poop, right? That's not good. Now again, every now and then, it's okay. Not trying to throw everything out and make you start all over, but those are some things that we talk about. But we'll get into 4 specifics here. So we've got carbs, proteins, fats, and toxins in regards to foods. And so curb your carbs. And I think that's become pretty self-explanatory. I ask anybody, I don't care what kind of diet you're on, what you do for nutrition, everybody knows now that the processed carbs are one of the worst things that we can put into our body. Right now, about 80% of the food that we eat in the United States is processed food or genetically modified. And so we talk about carbs, and people have to realize that there's simple carbs, which is all of your processed things like bread, rice, pasta, tortillas, oatmeal. And then over here you have complex carbs, which are what? Vegetables. Right? Vegetables are carbs too. They have sugar content in them, but it's harder for your body or it takes longer for your body to break that down, so it's not instantaneous sugar rush to your system. And here's what happens. You eat something like a piece of bread or a Snickers bar, Pastor Sam. A long time ago, though. Not anytime recently. And immediately that sugar is in your blood. So your pancreas starts to make insulin. And that insulin is designed to take that sugar to a cell to give your cells energy so that you can do things for the rest of the day, right? Well, the problem is in America, we eat enough sugar for our bodies to be able to run 2 different marathons in one day. I don't know many people that exert that much energy throughout the day. So what happens, your cells go, oh, we're full. We can't handle any more of the sugar. So then it's floating in your system. So now your pancreas goes, we need to make more insulin. So insulin keeps going up and insulin keeps going up. And it's trying to take more and more of that sugar to the cells, but the cells can't utilize that. So the blood sugar is floating around. The insulin is floating around. And then pretty soon your pancreas goes, man, we got a lot of insulin floating around. We should just stop working. We don't need to work anymore. Then you go from type 2 diabetic to type 1 diabetic. Then they give you the pump, and now you're on insulin pump for the rest of your life. Now, the truth is type 2 diabetes is completely reversible, okay, 100%. Type 1 diabetes, I've seen people get off their insulin. I've seen people reverse that. I saw one person go from over 90 units a day down to 5 a day. Now, they may not have gone off completely, but can you think about how much better that is for their body when they have that much less insulin? Because insulin staying in the system like that is very inflammatory. Every single disease that we have is directly linked to processed sugar. Cancer feeds off of processed sugar. Heart disease is because processed sugar starts to create this scarring and plaque inside of the arteries, and then cholesterol tries to heal that. It starts to oxidize, and then you get the scarring in there. Alzheimer's, ADHD, diabetes, everything is linked to this. And knowing that that's a majority of our diet. What's interesting, too, is the choices that we make. Sometimes we think we're making good choices. We go somewhere like, I'll use the M word, McDonald's. And the reality is, though, they don't have anything there that doesn't have sugar in it. Even they sprayed their lettuce with high fructose corn syrup. Their packets of salt have sugar in them. And so you look at that and you go, well, I thought I was getting a salad and some grilled chicken on it and making a good decision, and there's still high fructose corn syrup on there. There's still sugar in there. That is why we have to really hone in on reading labels and asking questions. And the biggest thing, though, is you have to do some of this work yourselves. If you really want to be successful at this, you have to plan, you have to spend time shopping, you have to have lists. The most work, really, that we do to be healthy comes through this nutrition aspect of it. And that's just what it is. Now, what I don't want, though, because nutrition is one of those things that everybody wants to talk about, we start to think that that's the most important thing in regards to health. There's actually lots of studies that show people that eat unhealthy, but they exercise and they're overweight, and the people that, so you got the group over here that doesn't eat healthy and they exercise, and the group over here that eats healthy and doesn't exercise. Guess which one lives longer? The people that exercise. So there's lots of studies that look at increasing longevity in life actually has a lot to do with exercise. So we can't just, again, pinpoint one specific essential. That's why there's 5 of these, and we don't really even number them anymore because they're all equally important. But now if you want to lose weight or you want to get off of a medication, something like that, reverse a disease, nutrition, first place to start. Okay? And curbing your carbs, that is the key thing. You've got to learn how to minimize that. But, we can get into all the micronutrients, but a lot of times that's a waste. Think about it macro, like big picture wise. People come in a lot and they're like, well, what does this enzyme do? And how does the ratio of this work to that? And I was like, well, we could talk about that, but what'd you have for breakfast? They had donuts and coffee or a Pepsi. And it's like, well, just change your diet there and then we can kind of get into some more stuff. So we all know what to do. I promise you, there's really no new research that's changed how we should be eating over the last 50, 60 years. There's all these diets from keto to carnivore to paleo to, there's a Mountain Dew diet, there's a popcorn diet, there's anything you want, you can find a diet out there for it. It's not about a diet, it's about eating things that feed your body. And you need to learn how to thrive off of that. And that goes back to the mindset thing, thinking about what we put into our body and understanding that God's word says that we should honor God with our body, that we present a living sacrifice to him, and it's an act of worship, and that we should do everything unto his glory. Have you ever thought about that when you're eating and you're eating that donut and you're like, does that glorify God? We don't do that. We do that when we're praising and we're praying and sometimes in conversations and our actions every day. But how does what we're doing on a daily basis with our health honor God? And I promise you start asking that question every time when your alarm goes off and you decide whether you should get up or not, or you start to put something in your mouth and you're like, oh, is this honoring God? It starts to change your actions. And so honestly, if you wanted to do one thing, that'd probably be one of the best things to do right there. Just start there. But now, going back into that, it really is about just getting nutrients. And so when we talk about nutrition, we talk about food by God versus food by man. Food by man is anything that comes out of a window or a box. Anything that's processed. We know that's not good for us. Like, it's not rocket science. Stuff that's grown, that was created by God, animals and plants, those things, much better for us. So even if you said, hey, I'm going to move towards that, you're making a better decision. Other simple things too. People ask, well, if I could just do one thing nutritionally, what would it be? Add in a green smoothie. There's hundreds and hundreds of recipes out there for that now. Just add that in. Even if you change nothing else, I promise your blood chemistry and those things will start to change. Just doing that. Now, as far as carb content goes, people have been taught that we have to have all of these carbs for energy and for our brain function, all that. Our bodies were actually designed to live off of fat. It's a preferred fuel source for our muscles, for our heart, our brains coated in fat, our organs are coated in fat, our nervous system's coated in fat, everything's coated in fat. We need it to make hormones, all that. We don't need as much sugar as you think we do. And so your carb content, like if somebody's doing a keto diet, it's just between 20 and 50 grams a day. And a lot of people think, well, that's not that much, because when you look at a Frappuccino from Starbucks, you've exceeded your daily intake with one drink, right? And people go, oh, it's just a treat. I just have it once a day. Well, once a day, if you don't eat anything else, then that may work for you. But that's usually not going to get you through the rest of the day. So we've got to learn to try to change our view of that. And again, breads, rice, pasta, those type things, oatmeal, tortillas. Not saying that you can't have those, but we've got to learn to minimize those. And the cool thing now is there's so many alternatives to that. There's a brand called Siete. They actually use cassava flour and almond flour. They actually make tortillas. There's Ezekiel bread, good for life. They actually make everything from bread to muffins, all kinds of stuff out there. So if you want to have that, you can just go into stuff that's more of actual non or less processed grains, as opposed to something, like wheat bread. They take all of the good nutrients out of it and they try to put stuff back into it. It's so highly processed. They've actually shown that eating a slice of wheat bread can stimulate your blood sugar just as much as a Snicker bar can. Now, I'm not saying that you should eat the Snicker bar instead of the wheat bread, but yeah, it's toxic for you. And then the last thing with that is alternatives. So if you're cooking, you're baking, you're looking for things. So UCAN syrup, monk fruit syrup, stevia, those things are actually good alternatives that you can use, right? Now, some of the ones that you don't want to use, anything that comes in a pink, blue, or yellow packet, right? Anything that is an artificial sweetener, I don't care if you're diabetic, I don't care what you have going on, those things are toxic, and I really believe that they're one of the worst things that we can actually put into our bodies. And so stay away from those. There are so many alternatives to that. And again, people have coffee in the morning like, oh, I just put a little bit of Splenda in there. It's still a little bit, and every single day that adds up. And the problem, though, is, if people just had that in the morning, you go, okay, I can handle that. The problem is, though, they're having 3 or 4 cups of coffee, and then they have some sweet tea at the end of the day, and they're also eating spaghetti and bread, and then they have the sandwich at lunch, and so it just adds up, and the bucket gets full really, really quick. So the next one is proteins. And when you look at how proteins are designed to work, they're actually designed to help build muscle and tissue in your system. And a lot of times we minimize protein because we've heard that animal products are bad for us. Well, we actually are created to eat animal products, and it's okay to eat those. Now, I will say the easiest way to get protein in, though, is doing like a smoothie or a shake and taking a powdered protein. If you're going to do that, make sure that it's grass-fed if you're using the whey protein. If you're going to do a plant-based, make sure that it is not soy. You want to use like a pea protein or something like that. But proteins, there's just a couple things we'll hit here. Number one is, whatever you want your ideal body weight to be, that's the number of grams of protein that you should have per day. So if you want to weigh 120 pounds, you should have 120 grams of protein per day. That seems like a lot, and that's why I tell people you probably should have to use some kind of smoothie or something like that. Now, the goal is not you keep eating all of the carb stuff over here and then add that much protein on top of it. You learn these ratios of how that works. Now, with protein, the key things, the main thing about this is actually you have to, if you go, oh, well, it costs money to eat healthy. Well, you're right when it comes to protein. You have to spend the money here. This is not a question. But your beef has to be grass-fed. Your chicken has to be free-roaming, free-range. Your eggs, free-roaming, free-range. Your dairy really should be raw. And your fish should be wild-caught. There's no other way around that. There's just way too many toxins, way too many things that are in there. And if you guys look at, they feed, do you know what they usually feed cows and chickens to fatten them up really quick? Sugar. They give them tons of grain, which are sprayed with chemicals, but they actually give them candy bars and candy. They actually take a lot of leftover candy they buy from these candy factories, and they put it into the feed and feed it to the cows because the sugar is what actually makes them fat. And so they get to go to slaughter faster and much bigger. So just another reason, stay away from that. But grass-fed, free-range, free-roaming, wild-caught, and raw as much as possible. Those are the key things for the protein. And then going into the fats. This is where you want to stay away from trans fats, hydrogenated oils, partially hydrogenated oils. Anytime you look at a label and it says any of those three words on there, dump it. It's bad for you, okay? The other thing now is canola oil, and that's been touted so long as such a healthy option, and it's not. You want to cut that out too. But coconut oil, olive oil, almond, avocado oil, those things are actually healthy. Now, there's certain temperatures that we cook at those at, but if I was going to give you one good thing from a healthy fat standpoint, increase omega-3s. Now, the easiest way to do that is through fish. A lot of people don't eat fish really is very, very much, so you have to take a supplement. I used to tell everybody you need to take vitamin D. That's the one thing that you should take is vitamin D3. Now I tell everybody you should take an omega-3 just because it's anti-inflammatory. It helps with your brain function. You need to be taking an omega-3. That's like a cod liver oil, some kind of omega-3 fish oil. You can get it through chia seeds and flax seeds too. You just have to eat so much of that stuff that it's almost impossible to get the amount that you would need. But that's a super good way to get good nutrients into your body, and it decreases inflammation in the body too. Now, the last one is the toxins. And so this is what we call the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. The Environmental Working Group actually puts out on their website every single year the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. And what that does is it tells you what you can buy organic and what you can buy conventional. And there's certain things, it changes every year, but you don't have to always buy organic in regards to produce. So the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen on the Environmental Working Group, it's ewc.org, easiest way to decide. The other thing we have to do with toxins and produce has to do with the UPC code. Have you guys ever learned how to read that UPC code on there? So if you look at it, there's either 4 digits or 5 digits on that code. And if it's 4 digits, it means that it's conventionally grown. So it could have chemicals. It may not. It could be that it's organic. It may not. You don't really know. But if it has a 5-digit code, it either starts with an 8 or a 9. If it's 8, it's genetically modified. If it's 9, it's organic. So it tells you that you want to buy something with a 5-digit code that has a 9 on it. That means it's organic. And so that's the easiest way to get those toxins out of there. Now, we'll go through the rest of this pretty quick so that we can have a couple minutes to ask some questions, because again, people usually have the most questions about the nutrition. But a couple things I do want to hit real quick before we get to the question are the other 2 essentials. Exercise. And I could spend hours and hours talking about exercise and the right type of exercise and what to do for your body and how you can stimulate certain hormones and have an oxygen depletion in your body to burn fat longer with certain type of exercise. But the key thing is just do something. I mean, I've spent so many years trying to beat people over the head just to move. Find something that you enjoy to do and just do it. It doesn't matter. I don't care what it is or where it is. Like, if you want to dance, If you want to walk, if you want to Zumba, if you want to lift weights, if you want to bike, if you want to kayak, just find something that you enjoy doing, and make it a daily thing. Even if it's only for a couple minutes, you have to have a routine. I'm not saying you need to exercise every day, but it's got to become a part of your routine. So set it up to where you're at least starting the process, and it may, again, only be a couple minutes, but do it every single day. And if you want to get the most benefit, high-intensity interval training is the most beneficial. It gets the best of all the worlds and puts it into one, and it only takes about 12 to 15 minutes to do that. And now you can go online and Google HIIT, and there's a million different types of workouts on there. And so once you kind of get into that and you feel like you want to add something to it, start doing a HIIT exercise, and that makes a big difference. Now, the last essential, and again, not any kind of order, but we wrap up with this one, is the nervous system. And I am a chiropractor, and so this one means a lot to me because I've seen it change my life. I've seen it change my family's life. So many people have been affected by the understanding of the nervous system. I see people come in all the time that eat healthy and exercise, and they've minimized toxins, and they've done all these things, and they still have symptoms. They not just neck pain and back pain and headaches, but they have diseases, heart disease, diabetes, those things, and they don't understand why. And it's because we don't understand how the nervous system was created and what it's designed to do. Most people think of a chiropractor or your spine with headaches, back pain, neck pain. And chiropractic works great for those things, don't get me wrong. But it's more about how your body functions. There's one organ in your body that controls and regulates every single function. What is that? It is your brain, right? You can go, if you think about not eating, you can really go about 40 days without food. You can typically go about 7 days without water. You can go several minutes without air. You can't go 1 second without a nerve supply. That's how important it is. Your brain is sending messages and signals down your spinal cord through the nerves to every muscle, gland, organ, tissue, cell in the entire body. We had a guy come in one time, and he didn't tell me that he was diabetic, but he had back pain, and so he started getting adjusted, and then he was gone for like a week, and I was like, where is he? And I called him, and he wasn't answering, and finally he shows back up, and he's like, oh, I'd been in the hospital. He's like, my blood sugar kept dropping so low, they ended up having to take me off of my diabetic medication. Didn't change anything. But the nerves that were going to control his pancreas were the same ones that were causing the pain that he was having. No one had ever put that together. And that's the power of the body's ability to heal. And the spine is designed to be in a very specific position. And most people have never been taught that. We hear the word like scoliosis, or we hear the term reverse curve in our neck. And a lot of times people get told, well, that's just normal, or that's just common, or it's slight. Well, any time that it's out of position, that's putting pressure on a nerve, interfering with the signal going from your brain to an organ or gland. If you cut the nerves going to your heart, guess what happens to your heart? Stops. Well, if you've got pressure on a nerve that's not allowing the heart to function at 100%, and you leave that over time, is it going to get better or worse on its own? And then eventually what happens? It dies, right? People go, how in the world can having spinal issues cause those things? Now, again, there's 5 factors that go into that, but when we leave one out, we are reducing our risk of being completely healthy. And this is how the body was designed to heal. This is how the body was designed to function. And we go back to the true definition of health. It's all about function. Well, the nervous system and the spine regulate, control function in the body, so therefore is controlling and regulate how healthy we are. So if you know that and you want to be healthy, what should every single person take care of? They should take care of their spine. Less than 4% of people actually get adjusted on a regular basis or ever use a chiropractor, right? Because we've been told that you only go when you what? When you need to, when you hurt. Well, what if you only ate healthy when you felt like you needed it? Or you exercised when you felt like it? And you think about people that go and they go, well, I went to the chiropractor once a year. Well, what if you ate healthy once a year? Or you exercise once a year? Nothing's going to change, right? There's a lot more to it and complex. And that's our fault. Like, we haven't done a good job of educating people how it's designed to heal and function. But that is the number one thing in regards to health and healing your body. And you have to make sure. And to be honest, most people have never had that checked. They've never had it looked at. They have no clue what's going on. And that's really one of the main reasons why I do these talks, is to give people an opportunity to get checked and to find out what's going on. Because if you don't know, ignorance isn't bliss. And you know, I think about what it's worth to people. And so going back to the story that I was talking about, Nancy, in the beginning, that actually was my mom. And she passed away back in May. And my mom didn't leave the house for about 5 years. She was only 69 years old when she passed away. And she had been sick for years and years. And, you know, it's one of those things where she outlived really what I thought she would. She was on so many medications. She didn't even leave the house to go to doctors. They came to her. And we would go visit. I grew up in Tennessee, and I'd go visit her, and she didn't even want to come outside to see the grandkids. She would come out to the porch, but she really wanted to stay inside, and she had lost hope, and I spent so many years and years like trying to reach her, but she believed what those other doctors had told her over her own son. And that hurt, right? But the truth is, I spent years and years praying that somebody would reach her and tell her the truth and help her understand, because she didn't really want to listen to me. And I think about everybody sitting here and people watching online, and that you are somebody's mom, you're somebody's sister, you're somebody's daughter, husband, you know, kid. And I have this desire to see people not go through what my mom went through and what I have had to go through of watching her. And even though she had been so sick, I got to the point thinking, like, this lady's going to outlive me. Like, she's going to live forever. Like, and then I get a call one day from my aunt, and she went into the hospital. I actually did a FaceTime with her. One of the nurses brought her phone in there so I could FaceTime her, and that night she passed away. So I didn't even get to go, you know, see my mom in her final hours. And I think that's a tragedy, and honestly it breaks my heart. And obviously with COVID, we've seen a lot of that, people not being around when the family members and loved ones pass away. And it's such a tragedy to see that, and knowing that we have a potential to minimize that, to reduce that. And it takes us moving, taking action, not just sitting still and thinking nothing's going to happen or it's going to get better on its own. Nobody ever just ignored their health and woke up one day and said, wow, this really worked out. I'm glad I'm healthy. I didn't have to do anything. That's not how it works. You have to take action. And so we talk about 3 things that people really we want to take away from tonight. One of them is actually that one thing. What are you going to do? What is your action step? Have that. Take it with you. Number 2 is tell somebody. You know, reach out. That's why I love these streaming things, because there's a lot of people listening to this that I'm never going to meet. I'm never going to know them, but they may have heard something that could radically change their life. We've had people who bought books and sent them to friends overseas, and bought HIIT exercise DVDs and sent it to family members, people that I've never met, but they're getting information that's going to change their lives. We have the responsibility to share that truth with people. And the third one is if you think that you want to understand how your body is functioning, healing, then we're offering the opportunity for people to come in and get checked. And we're basically waiving the cost of the x-rays. It saves about $100. It's $49 to come in, consultation, exam, any x-rays that we need to take, and we're going to open that up for the next week. So, you know, if you're here, Shayna's going to be here. She can set you up with that. If you're watching online, you can call, go through our email or our office, Facebook, or the website, and we want to open that up. But the main thing is that you take action. Just, you know, you got to start somewhere, and you got to do something. And, you know, it's awesome to sit here and so many people seem involved, and you're nodding head yes, and you're like on board, and it sounds great. But, you know, to get great changes, you got to take great action. And so don't just let this be a message that you walk out. You know, we call it the summer camp scenario. It's like you walk out and you're like, oh, that was awesome. And then 2 days later, life hits you and you forget what just happened, right? Continue to take action. So, you know, that's basically what I've got from the 5 essential standpoint. So, you know, we got a couple minutes, and this is kind of ask me any questions you've got. And hopefully I have a good answer. Yes. Yeah, for a friend. Gotcha. Yeah. Hypothetically, for a friend. What was that? Sorry. Sink water. So, in Plano, Dallas, they actually have if you look at the testing of the water, there's tons of medications in there. They have a really high count of antidepressants, of thyroid medication. And it's not they're dumping the water, they're not putting that in the water to medicate us, but there's still a lot of hospitals, nursing homes, even though it's illegal, that stuff gets dumped into the water, and our system isn't designed to pull that out. So there's a lot of antibiotics in there too. That's why you see so many of these strains of different things and all the mutation of these viruses and bacteria because of all the antibiotics in the water. So that's the reason we tell people not to drink tap water. There's tons and tons and tons of medication in there. Plus they use chloramine here, but the chlorine and chloramine, which is, they put it in there to kill everything, but it's highly toxic to our bodies. Plus, they add fluoride. And if you look across the world, there's so much research showing how fluoride is not good for us. It's linked to cancer, actually, even everything from cavities, all that stuff. So that's the big reason.
Can I ask you, what water would you drink?
So, there's bottled water, but obviously the plastic can be an issue too, and we're not trying to, get plastic islands and the chemicals that leach out of the plastic. And to be honest too, there's a joke for a long time that Dan Sonny was just Detroit River water that was unfiltered. But when you start testing a lot of the bottled water, you don't filter them. So if you can get like a natural spring water, that's a much better option. But a reverse osmosis would really be the best. Now, reverse osmosis kills everything though. And so what we recommend doing is getting like mineral drops and putting in there, because water's supposed to have minerals in it, and we utilize those. So putting mineral drops into reverse osmosis water, or we use a Berkey filtration system. And, it's basically this massive thing that sits on the counter, and you fill it up, and it does a filtration and gets all that stuff out. And actually does a really good job of getting out like the chlorine, chloramine, fluoride, anything like that. So we use a Berkey filtration system.
3 questions.
Oh.
All in one. Can you ride? Is it okay for a stationary bike in your home for exercise?
Yes.
And what type of fish is good to eat? As far as if you want to have fish on Fridays, what's a good fish to have?
Okay.
If you can't have a shellfish, what's a good fish? And coffee. Is it, can you have at least 1 cup a day?
So the first and third answer is yes. So stationary bike is great. Use it, period. Coffee, yes. There's actually a lot of benefits to coffee. And tea can be a little bit different because nobody wants just regular tea. You got to get sweetened tea, and there's tons of sugar in there. So you got to stay away from that part of it. But coffee and the caffeine actually does stimulate certain parts of the brain, and there's some good aspects to that. So I'm not saying get rid of coffee, but you also don't need to be drinking 6, 7, 8 cups a day either. But a cup a day you're great with, yeah. Now the fish, you want to stay away from anything that's farm raised, and tilapia is one of those that's always farm raised. So stay away from tilapia. But the smaller and the fatter the fish, the better. Now, nobody really likes sardines and anchovies and those things, but they're actually the best ones.
I like sardines.
Good. Well, we have a rare group here, because usually people are like, boo. But the smaller and the fatter the fish, the better. Now, again, you want them from, not farm raised. You want them to be wild caught. But then as you start getting up, you've got things like tuna and salmon and some of those things. But the fatter the fish, the better, as long as it is wild caught. So it is a bottom feeder. Sorry. Good. Any other questions? Yeah. So it's actually interesting. So when we talk about getting aligned and putting the spine in the right position, you're actually moving the bone and trying to align that, but you're getting pressure off of the nerve. It actually stimulates communication from your brain out to your organs and glands in your body. There's actually certain things that happen. There's a thing called a respiratory burst that happens for about 30 minutes after you get adjusted that increases your LAK cells, natural killer cells, T helper cells, CD4 cell count goes way up. So there's a part of your immune system that gets stimulated after that helps boost Yeah, they say your immune system goes up about 200% for 30 minutes after you get adjusted. So just from that standpoint, it's helping. But it's almost like hitting a breaker, and it's resetting things. So you're aligning the spine to allow communication from the brain out to the body, and instead of like it's like kinking the water hose. You're unkinking the water hose, really. And sometimes too, when you talk about discs and pressure on nerves, they hit. Only 6% of nerve fibers carry pain. 94% of all the nerves in your body control function and healing. So by the time you get to a point where it's actually hitting a nerve that's causing pain, typically it's been there for a while. People, like they bend over to put on a sock or pick up a pin, and like, oh, my back went out. That's been building for years. Just got to the point where it finally got over the edge. But you're aligning the spine, getting pressure off the nerves, and then it also, what's interesting is it increases oxygen by 30% to your brain and to your lungs. There's about 10,000 chemical and hormonal processes that start to balance out when you get adjusted. So there's a lot of cool things that happen. Yes?
I have two questions too. One is just piggyback on that. How often is it recommended for someone to be adjusted?
And that really depends on what's going on. And to be honest, you've got several things that go into consideration. We take x-rays of each person because that really gives you a 100%. It's black and white. This is what's happening. And then depending on how long things have been there, what's going on. But then also people have goals. Some people want to actually correct structure. Some people want to maintain what they have. So there's different things that go into play. But what they have found, though, that if you have a misalignment in the spine and there is pressure there, within 10 days, it actually starts to deteriorate the outer covering of the nerve. So you're altering the signal. But then also within about 14 days, it starts to develop arthritis. And so people get told arthritis is something that happens because we get older. Arthritis in your spine happens because of abnormal position of the spine. It's not because you get old. Like, there's people that don't have that, so.
And then number two, is there, so my daughter was prescribed by her dentist, a fluoride-based toothpaste.
Yeah.
That has like extra fluoride.
Right, yeah.
So I'm curious, do you happen to know, like, what is better? Like, and they did that for a reason because of her teeth.
Yeah, so there are certain things, like nutritionally wise, making sure they're staying away from any kind of food colorings, and then sugar itself, because that's really the two things that deteriorate teeth the most, and especially the outer covering. So staying away from that. But then I would use a non-fluoride-based toothpaste. But then you can do things too. It's kind of hard to get kids. It depends on their age, but we call it oil pulling. So actually using coconut oil and swishing it around in there for 5 to 10 minutes, and then spitting it out. That actually helps rid the mouth of like viruses and bacteria and stuff like that because it's antimicrobial. So you can do some things like that too.
Coconut oil?
Yeah, so just find the first pressed coconut oil and take a scoop, put it in the mouth. You got to make sure that she doesn't swallow any of it though.
She's an adult.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so just make sure she doesn't swallow any of it, and then after about 10 minutes, spit it out, but do that every day.
Recommend that she discontinue the prescription.
I mean, there may be a certain situation here or there, so I can't necessarily say that not knowing, but I mean, if it were me, I wouldn't do it. Anybody else?
Yes, quick question.
Oh.
Is going every week wise?
Oh yeah, like I mean, I get adjusted every week. I adjust my kids probably. I adjust my oldest. He's almost 13, but I adjust him every day, and he's the healthiest kid I've ever met. And I adjust my other kids a couple times a week too. My wife, I get adjusted. Yes, there is actually, it's interesting because people think like, oh, I don't get adjusted too much. More is better. So yes.
When I first started with you, I got adjusted, I think, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And that worked fine. And then as things got better with my spine, I went down to 2 times a week. The last time, so now Pastor and I go once a week, but the sciatica nerve problem that I had, well, they first did a injection. That didn't work. Then they came back and they did the epidural. That was supposed to work. And then in between that, looked like the Lord and Pastor Sam said, you need to go back to Dr. Rick, because I had stopped. And after I stopped, I could tell there was a difference. But then when I came back and I started back the adjustments, I don't suffer with that anymore. And am I saying that this helped? Absolutely, because we tried the different tests, and that didn't work. And then when I came to you, you started then I didn't tell him what the problem was. He could feel it. I don't know how he found out that, but he could feel, and he would work on the area that I knew was a problem, but he didn't know it was a problem. And that sold me, and I told him, I said, we have got to go. So we go once a week. We used to go more than that, but every now and then we miss. But it has made a difference. I'll be honest with you. It has made a difference, and I'm not here trying to sell that. It's just that it's made a difference in my whole body.
Good. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. And, anytime you have a question, please, you can email, text, call, Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff. That's our purpose, is to help educate people. So anytime you have questions, but obviously anytime you want to get checked too, just let us know, or anybody else that you have friends or family.
Yeah. Can you put the information up so that the listening audience can know how to get in touch with you? Oh, you asked me. And she's here for.
I think we did. Oh, he didn't have it? Oh, sorry, what was that?
She said, I was asking.
Oh, yeah, and she actually has some different magazines and things that we put out that has our information on there too, like our card and all that stuff with our website and all that on there. So you guys can take those too. They're free and read through it and get some more information. But it's got our information. And then obviously through the link, we probably can get that set up. Yeah. Oh, yeah, so our Facebook is at Chase Oaks Cairo. Our website is drroyston.maxliving.com. Our phone number is 469-543-6999. Is that everything?
Can you say it one more time, please?
The phone number? Yeah, 469-543-6999. So we do work with all the insurance companies. We always tell people, if you bring your card in, we'll verify it and let you know. So the way the process works, the first appointment is an exam. We do an exam, determine if we need to take x-rays, and then what we do at that point is schedule a time where we sit down and go over those x-rays with you. And at that point, we would list out recommendations, cost, how insurance works with your plan, all of that stuff. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
My wife said this morning, she was concerned about toxins in our food supplies at the present time. Is that possible?
No, I mean, food is not what it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. I mean, it's not even a lot of people think, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Like, it's not even a theory anymore. It is a known fact that we are using tons of chemicals on every single food source. And so that's why a lot of things, it is important to buy organic and even supplement, because sometimes we have to supplement because our food source just isn't what it used to be. And that's, it's unfortunate, it's sad, but that's just the reality of the world that we live in. Not everybody has their own farm, but there's a lot of co-ops now and a lot of farms around that have this stuff available that's really what we utilize a lot. There's things we do buy a lot of stuff at Costco because they have, some of these things, or Sprouts, places like that, but a lot of it is farmers markets and co-ops, because you know where this stuff's actually coming from. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Pastor Sam.
Address the issue of belief and that kind of stuff when it comes to the kidney. You got 2 minutes.
Okay. So everybody asks about pain medication, especially over the counter. Well, Tylenol attacks your liver. Advil attacks your kidneys. Every time that you take an aspirin, you leach about a spoonful of blood into your intestines. That alone is enough. I mean, people think, well, there's one better than the other. And most of the time now they're telling you to alternate them, because if you take one for too long, they know it's either going to get your kidneys, your liver, or your gut. And so they're saying to alternate those. It's not because one works for a while and then it stops and then the other one works. It's because they're trying to minimize it killing you. And so it's their time and place, and people, they got to get by sometimes, but that stuff is not meant to take. In fact, we have a patient, before she started, she had a car accident, and they gave her, the 800 milligrams of Advil at the hospital, and her kidney shut down. She had a transplant. And so now we've known her for probably 13, 14 years now. She's lived for almost 14 years or so with kidney transplant because of the ibuprofen they gave her at the hospital. And that doesn't happen to everybody, and she's young.
What about aspirin when your doctor tells you to take the aspirin so you won't have a heart attack?
Well, you got to understand what causes heart disease, and then what you can do to actually start to reverse that, and then maybe you won't need that. But that's a conversation that we can have. But I honestly, in most situations, disagree with that, because they give you the 81 milligram aspirin, but what if you did things that could reverse your risk of that without having to take it? That might be nice, right? And honestly, there's things, because what that does is it thins your blood, and that's why they have you do that. Well, omega-3s actually thin your blood too, and so you can actually get your blood viscosity tested. It can tell you where it's at. You start taking higher doses of omega-3s and watch your blood viscosity go down. It actually starts to thin out, and you go, well, now you're minimizing your risk with something that's actually healthy for you and not the medication.
So I take omega-3 for heart and brain.
Now we start getting into more complex conversation because you have to know the source of it. And there's so many of those out there, and people, unfortunately with omega-3s, there are really only a few brands that we recommend, and you do get what you pay for in that situation. A lot of times people think, oh, it's omega-3s, I'm going to go, get the least expensive one I can, or the most name brand, and that's not always benefiting you. So when somebody mentions that, we have to sit down and actually talk about the specific brands of what would be good. I mean, we do promote some. Carlson's cod liver oil, Nordic Naturals, those are good, but there's definitely, that's a conversation.
And he has applications here if you're interested in his care. One time, 2 times. Yes, to come see.
Amen. Well, give God some praise for that information. What Dr. Rick has taught us is that our responsibility is to make sure we take care of our health, not the doctor.
Yes.
Because doctors are doctors, and they practice. And they practice on us. And so that's it. Thanks again, Dr. Rick, for coming. I've been going to Dr. Rick for 12 years. Met him through Sister Christina Mensaber. She's the one that introduced me to him some 12, 13 years ago, and we've been going ever since. And so I hope you guys learned something. Those who are watching online, I hope that was something you picked up also. My one thing that I'm taking away is, okay, I won't say it. I was almost to go there. Bacon, love bacon, love bacon. But I've changed my diet a lot since I met Dr. Rick. Let's stand. We're going to be dismissed. Again, thank you, Dr. Rick, for coming. And Shanna, thank you for coming. Father, again, thank you for the information that has been shared with us. We realize, God, that you put people in the earth to be a blessing in our lives, to help us educate ourselves, that we might live and not die. We ask, God, that you would bless his ministry and, God, the work that you use him to do. For your glory, in Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, and we are dismissed.